Circe by Madeline Miller. In the Odyssey, after Circe turned Odysseus' men into pigs, in retaliation, he decides to tame her with help from Hermes, the god of heralds. Such is the role of women in most of Greek mythology, relegated to wife, mother, witch, goddess, or monster. In Circe, Madeline Miller gives her a resonant voice by taking us through a journey of her life in exile. Born as a child of the nymph Perse and Titan sun god Helios, Circe never really fit in the halls of the gods. Quietly defiant, teased mercilessly for wanting to please, and having the voice of a mortal, she discovered that she possessed witch powers when she accidentally, out of jealousy, transformed the mortal into a lesser god, and Scylla, a nymph, into a monster. Zeus, the king of Olympians, feared Circe's magical powers and decided to contain her by exiling Circe to the island of Aiaia for all eternity. We see, through Circe's eyes, the quarrelsome gods and titans, their petty squabbles and eternal games. Left alone, Circe gradually grows into her powers, not from divine entitlement, but rather from sheer hard work and practice. We are brought through a journey with familiar stories within the Odyssey, a narrative reframed from her eyes, such as the story of the Minotaur, Medea and Jason of the Argonauts, her relationship with Daedalus, and later Odysseus. With Odysseus, she bore a son, Telegonus, and Circe then had to learn how to be a mother. Even though she is a goddess, Circe was also a woman living alone, having to learn ways to protect herself from predatory men and gods, relishing self-reliance, experiencing heartbreak, single motherhood, and eventually understanding her own heart.
Hi everyone, I'm Diana, and this is the 4th episode in the Two Book Nerds Talking Literature for Equality project, where we're using books to examine gender issues.
And I am Honey, the other book nerd. And you have been listening to a summary of Circe by Madeline Miller. Now, some people say Circe, some people say Circe, but however you say her name, she is one of the most famous witches of Greek mythology. And this book has a place in our heart, doesn't it, Diana?
Circe was the first book that Honey and I did for this podcast, and I don't know, how long ago was that, Honey? It feels like
3 years
Oh my god,
ago.
was it only 3? It feels like forever ago. But anyway, okay, this pandemic has been going on for like 40 years, right? So
Yes.
But we really wanted to add this one onto this series because, it's got so many relevant issues that we felt that we really needed to do this. And it's just a good book anyway.
This is true. When I reread it, I really enjoyed it again the second time round. I wasn't sure, because I'm not a person who reread books, but I loved it the second time round too and got a lot more from it. And I think it's kind of interesting that how we are sort of like recording these episodes thematically, because we are kind of going through a life of a woman. Because in Iban Woman, we are in the early part of a girl's life as she matures into a woman, searching for identity, exploring first love. And we should all be feminists. She is a little older, questioning concepts like feminism and toxic masculinity. And then you jump into Kim Ji-young, a book that I'm still reeling from. I still have feelings about this book, because she is now starting to work and she's experiencing sexism and she's getting married. And now we go into Circe. Themes of motherhood and domestic life, so to speak. Yay! Isn't that great, Diana?
Yeah, we completely planned this, and don't let anyone else tell you differently. So today we'll be exploring traditional roles for women, like in domestic labor, motherhood, and how often that's unseen. Circe has so many layers to this book. There's like, on one hand, it's a retelling of a myth that gives a woman's perspective to a very male-oriented narrative. Like originally, Homer's Odyssey, none of the women had any speaking roles whatsoever, right? So it was all the men's story. The women just existed to like give babies and stuff like that. So Circe is a story that brings to the forefront the issues that women face in their day-to-day lives and so forth.
It starts with Circe's childhood, because, she is a daughter of a nymph, Perse, and Helios, the Titan god of the sun. So she is a goddess. But yet she is kind of marginalized in the halls of the gods. So even when she started having kind of all these witchy powers and she's changed the nymph Skyla into a monster, she was belittled regardless, So they say, if the world contained the power you allege, do you think it would fall such as you to discover it? So even from the beginning, her achievements are deemed not something worthy because they do fear this kind of idea of being a witch. And witches are sort of your bag, isn't it, Diana? I know you love stories on witches.
I don't know why. I've always been drawn to the stories of witches. Historically, being a witch was one of the few ways that women could actually have any kind of power. So, it began that back then, witches were kind of like wise women, right? A woman who had wisdom and knowledge of herbs and medical skills. But, a lot of these women, they were accused of witchcraft as a way to condemn women who had any knowledge or authority. So you kind of think back to all those classic stories with witches, like the three witches in Shakespeare's Macbeth. They're described as these repulsive midnight hags with skinny lips, chapped fingers, and beards. And they cast spells like with things like Eye of Newt and Toe of Frog. These people are as disgusting as the things that they're consuming, basically. If you dare to cross them or anything, you're going to be cursed. And the witches that you read about in fairy tales, they're always these disgusting, ugly crones. This whole fear of being accused as a witch was always used as a way to keep women in line. If a woman is making you uncomfortable with her beauty, she's got to be a witch because she's trying to get you under her power. And is she challenging a man's authority? She's probably the devil's familiar, come to create havoc and that kind of thing. So almost every woman who rose to prominence throughout history was accused of witchcraft at some stage in her life. Even the heroic Joan of Arc was denounced and burned as a witch.
I think even in our part of the world as well, right? When you talk about dukuns or bohmos or women who have this ability to heal or have healing properties or just have knowledge on, herbs to cure people. I mean, you have them and people want them in their society, but they're never really part of it. So it's always some woman, that nenek kebayan, right, that lives at the edge of a forest. But she's never denoted as part of the community. And if this woman is someone beautiful as well, oh my God, you're going to be lynched at some point. Because, just the word being bewitched by a woman, it uses the root word witch because they feel that it must be a spell. And I think people have always feared feminine power, even way back when. Which brings us back to Circe. Because the gods actually fear these sort of magical powers that seem to be outside of their providence of their influence. And what I thought Miller did so well in this book is that how her powers are actually gained by toil and trouble, as they say. She actually had to work in order to become a witch. It's not something that was just bestowed upon her. She's not entitled to it, while gods have powers that they are entitled to. I think this is a really great metaphor on how the providence of a woman that is set in hearth and home is often overlooked and marginalized. And Miller is telling you that it's worthy of its own epic. This exploration of domestic labor by way of Circe learning the boundaries of her powers in the book is, I thought, written incredibly beautifully.
I had a little pride, as I've said, and that was good. More would have been fatal. Let me say what sorcery is not. It is not divine power which comes with a thought and a blink. It must be made and worked, planned and searched out, dug up, dried, chopped and ground, cooked, spoken over and sung. Even after all that, it can fail, as gods do not. If my herbs are not fresh enough, if my attention falters, if my will is weak, the drafts go stale and rancid in my hands. By rights, I should never have come to witchcraft. Gods hate all toil. It's their nature. The closest we come is weaving or smithing, but these things are skills, and there is no drudgery to them, since all the day parts that might be unpleasant are taken away with power. The wool is dyed not with stinking vats and stirring spoons, but with a snap. There is no tedious mining. The oars leap willing from the mountain. No fingers ever chaffed, no muscles strained. Witchcraft is nothing but such drudgery. Each herb must be found in its den, harvested at its time, grubbed up from the dirt, culled and stripped, washed and prepared. It must be handled this way and that to find out where its power lies. Day upon patient day, you must throw out your errors and begin again. So why did I not mind? Why did none of us mind?
I think I really like the point that Madeline Miller is making in this passage. And I felt that she was trying to say that skills don't come easily, but through like tedious, meticulous, repetitive labor. But she doesn't mind this work because it's a labor of love. And I'm sure many people listening would have mothers who are excellent bakers of bread, who can produce great harvests from their tiny gardens. Many of us enjoy doing these things, not because we have to, but because, like Circe, we enjoy the sorcery of creation, right?
I really like that.
I was inspired by what you said before, Honey, about how resourceful women are. And women are the ones who make all the effort to create things to enrich their families' lives, even while they hold down a full-time job and they manage the household too. And especially in the Asian context, men have always been considered the breadwinner of families, and women stay at home to look after the family. But even women who stay at home do a lot of endless tasks, and many still find ways to supplement their family's incomes.
Absolutely. You know, like during this whole pandemic, you suddenly see people selling all these sauces in jars. And they're predominantly women. I mean, there are men as well who are selling all these kind of food items. But I think since time immemorial, women have been sort of like supplementing their family incomes via all these domestic labors, making jams, making preserves, making sambal, drying fish, selling perkasam. I remember going to the East Coast during the monsoon season, and you know, like the husband of the house will be repairing the nets and the woman will be making soya sauce. She'll be making ketchup. She's making all these things to supplement the family incomes during the lean months of monsoon. And this is all domestic work. This is all what you do on a daily basis, on how to make food stretch longer, how to save money, you know, how to make sure that your family doesn't go without when you actually have bad times. So yes, we should appreciate what women do at home, because I also feel that, and me included, that we do take for granted what our mothers do for us. Think of the sheer multitasking of it. I was telling Diana about this best friend of mine. She's a career woman, she's a wife, she's a mother, she's a daughter-in-law, all rolled into this highly efficient, no-nonsense girl, right? She's a CFO, and this is what often people see of her. They praise her for this, you know, for getting so high up in a corporate environment. But what is amazing is that when she comes home, she is raising 4 children too. You know, she runs her house, she cooks a meal, she plasters her children's hurt, she engages her children in conversation, she daily entertains her mother-in-law and encourages her husband in work. I mean, she is married to a lovely man who I'm sure does his share of the stuff. But man, I'm sure she's doing some of the heavy lifting, and she does it with such efficiency that nobody really notices it.
She sounds really amazing. But then again, I think most women will tell you it's a constant struggle to keep all the different roles juggled, right? Unfortunately, most of this burden still falls mostly on women. So I saw this meme recently that said, while you're teaching your daughters to girl boss, don't forget to teach your sons to male wife. Now, we encourage girls to girl boss. That is, we encourage them to pursue careers, to be productive members of the workforce. But if we don't teach boys to male wife, as in, you know, like prioritize the family, to be an equal partner in the household, to be fully competent and responsible in domestic matters, there's always going to be this unequal share of labor in the home. Don't forget, a mother's work isn't just in upkeeping a home. As much work as all that is, it's in making sure that everyone has the things they need for daily life. It's making sure that you create this happy and conducive home environment. And it's also in the emotional labor of being there for everyone in the house. There's so much that goes into keeping a family together, beyond just doing the chores and putting dinner on the table. Mothers tend to look after everyone else in the home, but she has to look after herself too.
And just the word male wife, even that alone, right, shows that how the word wife is so pigeonholed to mean that domestic labor and taking care. I mean the word main wife, honestly. Okay. So sometimes I'm not even sure that the word is undervaluing women's work. I think it's just we don't see it. We don't even think about it, right? And I remember we touched this a little bit on Iban Women, that even women themselves look at it as something very small. You know, like when a woman gives up her career in order to stay at home and look after her family, I'm sure there are women who are in the corporate environment, who work, who judge her. And that's the other thing as well, is that things like careers and academic achievement and things that happen in the work sphere is more respected than being a successful homemaker. People don't really hold it in the same esteem. Now, when people have to stay at home, they can actually witness at how much work it is to keep a home running.
There's this article in Malaysia Kini recently that said that in Malaysia, differences in unpaid care work and formal work are deeply rooted in gender roles. So how women and men spend their time can be attributed to the default assumption of women being carers and differences in domestic responsibilities. You know, in Malaysia, like 67% of women cite care and other familial and personal responsibilities as the reason for not being in the labor force. So, you know, because you have to look after kids, because, you know, you have maybe have elders that you need to look after, it doesn't make it worthwhile for you to go out and get a job. Only 2% of men have to worry about these kind of things. So this directly and negatively impacts women's participation in the labor force in Malaysia.
And is it improving? I mean, we live in modern times, right? Is it improving? So let's take a look at what happened during the COVID crisis. So many women now have to homeschool their children. They're cooking more meals. They're tackling even more household tasks than usual. Because, you know, everybody is at home, right? So the home gets dirty faster. So there was a recent article from The Atlantic that proclaimed the pandemic is a disaster for feminism because much of the increased workload of stay-at-home orders has fallen on women. So domestic work is one form of socially reproductive labor, daily work that enables people to perform their jobs, maintain their health, dinner on the table, clean house, clean children. I mean, this is essential, right, to a functional society. Socially reproductive labor is rarely celebrated or well compensated because historically this work was performed by female family members, servants, and in the past, enslaved women. Oh my God.
Running a successful household was always this source of pride for women. And people kind of like romanticized a woman's ability to provide a good home for her husband and family. So when feminist movements all around the world came about, this viewpoint was still really hard to dislodge. You know, like I remember reading in Handmaid's Tale how many women were so against the idea of dislodging women from the household, right? Because they thought that that was their castle, that was the kind of thing that was the pride and joy of their lives. So there's a lot of people who still believe that, you know, like a woman's home is her pride and joy. Like if you build up a very successful household, that is a kind of like, that is a measure of your success. So while men contribute more to housework today than they did 100 years ago, studies repeatedly show that women nonetheless continue to take on the majority of these responsibilities, even as they also manage successful careers. Because, you know, like you kind of feel like if I don't make sure that everything is running smoothly, I fail as a woman. That's kind of the feeling that a lot of people do have. So what the pandemic has made clear is that these workers are not undercompensated and unrecognized because their work is unimportant. They're undercompensated because historically their work has been considered unskilled and outside of the market economy and, you know, associated with women.
My God, just listening to that makes me tired. Is that why so many women are so knackered? Because not only do they have to sort of like supplement the family income by having careers, they are also, I think, almost nowadays, this having it all, right? This being able to have it all has become a little bit of the mantra of the modern woman. We've talked about this in our other books, but it really compounds it in this sort of episode where we're talking about domestic work and we're talking about this heroism, this everyday heroism that people never write songs about. I mean, I can't imagine there'll be an epic ballad about women's housework. You know, an ode to dusting. Maybe there should be. And I know we're veered a little far from Circe, but that's what this series of shows are meant to be, right? Books like Circe is a great jumping off point for a discussion like this. Think about it, right? Here is a book that is giving you a story about gods and titans, heroes and monsters, and yet within it is a very real story of a woman. And she might be a goddess, but Miller treats her as an every woman that is born in extraordinary circumstances. So what gods can take for granted, Circe does not. She works hard for her skills. So that is very relatable to us. And it is framed by an epic. I mean, a hero's journey of Odysseus, but yet what is more heroic, says Miller, is Circe. Surviving, doing the daily job of keeping house, rearing animals, planting an edible garden, taking care of errant nymphs that washes up on her island. And what is more heroic is Penelope, Odysseus' wife, who stayed back, kept his kingdom running, while being wooed by men who thinks that they can use her. So you're talking about devotion, tenacity, this unseen service to society, is often treated as something mundane and unexciting. Because who would not rather hear a story about dragons being slayed and daring escapes? And because Circe made her decisions on her own, and she kind of earned it. So that's the thing about this book. You feel that at the end of the day, who Circe is earned by her own hard work and by her own realization of how the world is. And she had that dignity. I think that's what's nice about this book. And the gods could not touch her until, of course, she has a child.
My whole life, I had waited for tragedy to find me. I never doubted that it would, for I had desires and defiance, and powers more than others thought I deserved, all the things that draw the thunderstroke. 12 times grief had scorched, but its fires had never burned through my skin. My madness in those days rose from a new certainty, that at last I had met the thing the gods could use against me.
This is the end of part 1. For discussion topics and some fun activities, go to rngdr.com/LFE. This is part 2 of our discussion on Circe. In part 1, we touched upon why women's labor is often undervalued. In part 2, we delve into another aspect of women's domestic life via motherhood and exploring our own takeaways from the book.
Yes, motherhood. So in Circe, half of the book is about her growing up life and her being an independent woman. The other half is about her being a mother. So this is a very strong theme in Circe. And I know, I am a mother of 4 kids, and I know it's a whole different ballgame from being you, Diana, a mother of human beings. So So listen to the excerpt on Circe's sudden shock of motherhood.
I did not go easy to motherhood. I faced it as soldiers face their enemies, girded and braced, swords up against the coming blows. Yet all my preparations were not enough. In those months that I spent with Odysseus, I had thought I'd learned some tricks of mortal living. 3 meals a day, the fluxes, the washing and cleaning, 20 swaddling cloths I had cut, and believed myself wise. But what did I know of mortal babies? Achilles was in arms less than a month, 20 cloths for me only through the first day. Thank the gods I did not have to sleep. Every minute I must wash and boil and clean and scrub and put to soak. Yet, how could I do that when every minute he also needed something, food and change and sleep? That last I had always thought the most natural thing for mortals, easy as breathing, yet he could not seem to do it. We did find some moments of peace, when he finally slept, when he nursed at my breast, when he smiled at the flight of birds scattering from a tree. I would look at him and feel a love so sharp it seemed my flesh lay open. I made a list of all the things I would do for him, scald off my skin, tear out my eyes, walk my feet to the bone, if only he would be happy and well.
Circling back to what you were saying about people romanticizing women's role in the house, that women should naturally care for their families out of love, and such devotion make the work of housekeeping and childcare not really work at all. What do you have to say to this, Diana?
I'm not really sure that it doesn't make it any work at all. Well, historically, I think women often had no choice in life, right? You had very few choices. You had to kind of like marry and have children. That was pretty much your only option. The only way to really secure your future was to marry well and have lots of children who would function basically as your retirement plan, right? So they'll be there for you in your older age.
You hope lah.
You hope. I guess it really like you kind of demonize people who don't look after their old people. Because everyone's counting on this retirement plan, right? So there's always this idea that women are born to want to get married and have children. But I mean, like, how many of us still believe that? In countries where women are better educated and have the ability to earn their own money, they're also choosing to marry later in life and have fewer children. So some countries even have to try and mostly fail actually to get their young women to give birth, giving them monetary incentives, trying to give them like extra unpaid leave, that kind of thing. And some say this is because women are becoming increasingly materialistic and selfish because having a child would disrupt their lives. But you do see that women who have more financial and personal freedom do choose to have more children. You know, like celebrities with large families like Angelina Jolie. She not only had her own children, she like adopted a lot of children as well. And look at the Kardashian Jenner clan. Like they all have kids. Kylie is having her second child at 24. And Kim K, she has 4 and she wants even more. She has problems, I think obstetric problems, so she can't really have a lot of children, but she has surrogates give birth for her. So, she wants children. Like when you have the economic freedom, women do want children. Well, I think what's happening is that women are actually wising up to the fact that what you were saying before, Hadi, about having it all. That's just a myth, really. Because, like when you get married and have children, women end up having to make most of the sacrifices in life. And it's been pointed out that young people actually being more responsible when they choose to have fewer children. Or, if they chose to have children only after they're settled in life. Because they actually want to have a good life for their children. So that's, I think, something that you could really say that people are actually more careful. It's not that they don't want to have children. It's just that it's getting really, really hard to have them.
Like what you just said, it feels like damn if you do, damn if you don't, right? Like, I suppose what we're talking about living in today's kind of world that allows you more choices is to make the choices that are right for you, as opposed to being pressured by society and by people's ideas of what you should want as a woman or what you should want as a man to dictate what you decide. Because, I had numerous conversations with people where they were going like, well, I'm 30. I should get married. You know what I mean? Just having that sentence, I should get married. I guess I should settle down. Even though they don't particularly want to settle down. But they feel that there is still this very kind of like predicted life that you have to live through in order for you to function in society. And I think today, at least, people are breaking away from that. If you want to have your kids on your own terms. But, it's true that a lot of people still feel pressure that they still need to have a job or they still need to be a mother or they still need, like I've heard so many women say, you never know how it's like to be a true woman until you become a mother.
Come on.
Yeah, I mean, where does all this come from? And why are we still doing this? Why are we still pressuring women, especially, to make decisions based on what you think is good for them? And for you out there who are listening to the show, think about as well, what are your desires in this world and how much of it is actually dictated to what you think is expected of you or what you think your mother wants you to do or trying to please someone. I mean, we know that women in general like to please people. We are raised to be nice, right? So perhaps it's good to actually have a book like this because honestly, even gods have this problem. Think about it, right? Circe is a goddess, and even she has to constantly compromise and figure out how to live in a world where everybody is telling her what she should be. Okay, so for instance, right, this whole idea about the fact that domestic life is the providence of women, right? Now, if you look at the animal kingdom, this is not the case. Flamingo dads, for instance, are considered feminists because when it comes to mating, dad will help mom select a nesting site. They will construct the nest together out of mud. Once she lays her eggs, the father shares in the responsibility of incubating the eggs, and they take turns on sitting on the nest. They actually share the parenting duties equally. Male frogs, amphibians, keep their tadpoles in their mouths until they're able to make it out on their own. Some amphibian fathers, such as the midwife toad, implant their spawn underneath their skin, usually on the backs of their legs. The golden lion tamarin, this is a monkey, right? By 2 weeks old, all the infants are carried on their father's back nearly 24/7. So giving the mom a bit of time to chill out, The father would then hand over the babies to their mother one at a time every 2 to 3 hours for her to nurse the baby for around 15 minutes. And then she gives it back to the father to carry the baby around. Emperor penguins, of course, after the mother lays their eggs, she putters off for 2 months for a long holiday. And it's the father that stands and keep the egg warm day in, day out. He doesn't even take a break to go and eat. So he spends 2 months just standing over the egg, waiting for the mother to come back, and then she takes over and he goes off and eats. And of course, seahorse fathers break all the rules because they are the ones who get pregnant and give birth. After the seahorse mother deposits her eggs into the father's pouch, the father fertilizes the eggs, incubates them until he gives birth to the tiny, fully formed seahorses after 20 to 28 days of pregnancy. So, if the animal kingdom can be equal, why are we not? The human kingdom, people with brains.
Yeah, it really goes to show, I think, that the way to have the best success for everyone in the family, for the father, the mother, and the children, is for everyone to work together and to share the burden of raising the family. It is a lot of work. It's invisible, unpaid work. Mothers are usually the ones that wake up the first in the morning, and the last ones to go to sleep at night. And they're the ones who give up all their personal time for the sake of their families. They often don't have time for hobbies or going to see other friends, and they'll go without sleep or skip meals if someone in the family needs them. And mothers are constantly multitasking, making a call to arrange a plumber to come to the house. At the same time, she's cooking dinner, and she's also trying to get the youngest to eat. Right? So all of this is invisible, unpaid work that is usually just dismissed. It's not a lot of work. You can just get it done, it's nothing. But if women don't have a full-time formal job, people will say things like, she's only a housewife. Because being a housewife is seen as being a person who is so ignorant or poorly educated that no one would give her a job. No one appreciates, the effort they put into tutoring their children, or chauffeuring people around, or the time they spend buying food and other necessities, all the household chores that no one appreciates, until someone can't find their favorite shirt, or they open the fridge and they can't find the milk, or the rubbish starts to smell when no one has thrown it out, that kind of thing, right? So yeah, I think it's just that we don't notice it because it's just that women just get the job done. They don't think about it, they don't talk about it, they just get it done.
I think this is why my mother had so many lists, because she has to constantly organize everyone. And she constantly have checklists, right? Okay, this is what you have to do. This is what needs to be done today. I also have to plan some makan, that my father invited a bunch of strangers home. She needed to make sure that everything was ticking along, right? And honestly, at the end of the day, right, if this is what you want to do and this is what you're good at doing, we should not judge women for the decisions that they make. And in fact, a turning point in Circe is when she went to the bedside of her sister Pasiphae, when she was birthing the Minotaur, and she was confronted by the truth of her childhood because, Circe grew up wanting to please. And Pasiphae sees it as a weakness. But this kind of ability to kind of figure out how to survive, I also feel lies a lot of strength and was very good for her later when she was exiled on the island.
It is funny, she said. that even after all this time, you still believe you will be rewarded just because you've been obedient. I thought you would have learned that lesson in your father's halls. None shrank and simpered as you did, and yet great Helios stepped on you all the faster because you were already crouched at his feet. She was leaning forward, her golden hair loose, embroidering the sheets around her. Let me tell you the truth about Helios and the rest. They do not care if you're good. They barely care if you're wicked. The only thing that makes them listen is power. It's not enough to be an uncle's favorite, to please some god in his bed. It is not enough even to be beautiful. For when you go to them and kneel and say, "I've been good, will you help me?" they wrinkle their brows. "Oh, sweetheart, it cannot be done. Oh, darling, you must learn to live with it." And have you asked Helios? I do nothing without his word. She spat on the floor. They take what they want, and in return they give you only your own shackles. 1,000 times I saw you squashed. I squashed you myself. And every time I thought, that is it. She will cry herself into a stone, into some croaking bird. She will live us, and good riddance. Yet, always, you came back the next day. They were all surprised when you showed yourself a witch, but I knew it long ago. Despite your wet mouth weeping, I saw how you would not be grounded into the earth. You loathed them as I did. I think it is where our power comes from.
We are now at the part of the conversation where we're talking about takeaways. And I feel, in general, when we talk about gender issues, there are so many spheres where women are not seen as equal. In Kim Ji-young, for instance, she was called the mom roach because she chose to be a stay-at-home mom. Yet the amount of responsibilities for caring for life, for making sure daily living runs smoothly is incredibly underrated. The idea that something is called women's work already undermines it. And this is the small box that all of us have to break out from, where we have to value domestic work, domestic life, maybe give proper compensation for it, or at the very least see it as heroic.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that I like the most about Circe is the way it grounds a feminine narrative. So Circe is a story written by a woman, about a woman, and for women. This is a feminine narrative, not only because it's from a woman's perspective, it's also because it's a story that doesn't fit into the usual hero's journey narrative. The story concentrates on what Circe thinks, the things that she worries about, her little successes and disappointments, and it spends very little time on her actions and the way her character develops. It's a very subtle thing, but something that people have noticed, especially in movies like Captain Marvel and Mulan, where a lot of men have mentioned that they don't get those movies because there's a lack of character development that they've come to expect. And this is because the heroine's journey is about a woman's struggle to embrace her full power and to shake off the constraints that have been put on her. To quote one screenwriter, the hero's journey fantasy for men is always starting at the bottom and coming to your own. So you are the complete badass at the end. The hero's journey fantasy for women is to be acknowledged for the power they already possess.
Oh my God, that's true, isn't it? And not only that, not only to be acknowledged, but for they themselves to accept it and be okay with it. Because there's so many layers to this sort of like gender conversation that we have about the feminine power. And whenever somebody talks about feminist retelling, people always seem to think a feminist retelling it means that a woman is heroic in the way that a man defines her as heroic. Well, a feminist retelling means that the choices that a woman makes and the stuff that she learns along the way makes her a fully realized woman. So it's interesting. There's so many feminist retellings of mythology. But before we go into that, we leave you with a recognition on Circe's part after she plays host to Penelope, which is of course Odysseus' wife. And women, she now knows, is made of strong stuff.
I looked at her, as vivid in my doorway as the moon in the autumn sky. Her eyes held mine, grey and steady. The light slanted through the window, pulling warm at our bare feet. It is a common saying that women are delicate creatures. Flowers, eggs, anything that may be crushed in a moment's carelessness. If I had ever believed it, I no longer did.
Okay, if you want to carry on reading, and we encourage you, after all, we are a book podcast, there's a whole slew of feminist retellings out there. If you'd like to read the story of Penelope, Odysseus' wife, try Margaret Atwood's The Penelopiad. She's kind of cute, actually. A tongue-in-cheek retelling of the events in the Odyssey from Penelope's point of view. It delves in double standards between sexes and touches on themes of justice and female agency.
Or you could try Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker, which retells the Iliad and gives voice to the women of Troy. The story is told through the eyes of Briseis as she navigates the Greek war camp after being taken hostage by Achilles. So Pat Barker has just released a new book called Women of Troy, which further tells the story from the women who are left behind after Troy has fallen.
We also did a show on feminist retellings via 3 fantastic books in Season 5, Episode 3. The Witch's Heart is about Loki's wife. Ariadne, which you meet in Circe after she betrayed her family, which resulted in the death of her brother Minotaur. So you can read about her point of view in Ariadne. And The Sister Song, which is a reimagining of an old British folk ballad. All are very, very good books to get stuck into.
Now that you listened to this discussion, we'd like to hear what you think. Why not make a TikTok of you cooking your favorite meal? Or tell us in an IG slideshow about all the cool things your mother does for you in the home. You could even start a Twitter thread about your takeaways from our discussion. Or what about posting to Facebook about your favorite quotes from Circe? Wow us with your creativity.
Indeed. The contest runs from 17th of October 2021 all the way to the 16th of January 2022. So you have about 3 months to kind of think about what you want to, enter in this competition. And you are free to respond to any of the episodes in the Literature for Equality project. And you can also respond to all 8 of the episodes in the series. It's up to you. The contest is open to any students aged between 12 to 20, currently studying in Malaysia, and there are 2 categories, young adult, 12 to 16, and secondary to tertiary, which is 17 to 20. And you can win some cool prizes.
Don't forget to include the hashtag Literature for Equality contest and tag us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, even on TikTok. Then head over to the contest page on rngdr.com/LFE to submit your entry.
This is the 4th episode of the Literature for Equality project, brought to you by us, the Two Book Nerds Talking podcast, and supported by the Canada Fund for Local Initiatives. Do check out the other 7 episodes in the series. To find the episodes and more information on the project, including contest details, and exercises, discussion, questions, you can check out our website at rngdr.com/LFE.
This has been the Two Book Nerds Talking with myself, Diana Yong, and my co-host, Hani Ahmad, wishing you a wonderful week ahead. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Bye!